Welcome to our presentation about writing with LLMs, learning language models. My name is Bill D. Herter. I'm the director of the SVSU Writing Center. And with me here today is Sam Ellen from the RPW department. Say hey, Sam.
Hello, how you doing?
Sam, how long have you been working in the center?
For this is gonna be my third year.
Yep. Sam's our technology specialist right now, and you have been working all summer with me developing these resources, right?
Yes, a lot of experimentation.
Yeah, and we're still sort of catching up with these machines as they continue to change. But today we're here and excited to present to you, uh, what can these LLMs do? What do you have to be careful about, and how you might go about using them in the most effective ways, incorporating them into your process and into the generation of potentially really solid text that you can use. So before we start, we do have to recognize that LLMs uh, do operate through like keeping data that is entered into them. So our advice is not to enter sensitive information or intellectual property into these machines because those companies would then technically own that information. And it's also important to recognize that these machines are quite limited in some very important ways. They don't actually have any sense of what words mean. So it's called a language learning model for a reason. If you think of an airplane and then think of a model airplane, those are not the same thing, right? An LLM is like a model of language. It's the appearance of having communicated or having thought about something, but it isn't necessarily the same thing. So most importantly to note about that difference is that it doesn't really have a sense of context, discipline-specific genre conventions, or ethics, or what might be the most effective rhetorical strategies. There's a lot to unpack in all of this. Uh, it's important to recognize that it doesn't have access to all the information. A lot of good information is going to be behind a paywall, and it shouldn't be able to access that stuff. It also doesn't necessarily come with the context of, past events, histories that shape our current communication practices. It also doesn't really necessarily understand how specific groups communicate with each other in very specific ways. So given those limits, what can LLMs reliably generate? Speaking generally, LLMs can generate general statements, more abstract language about a given topic. So that means it operates best when it's speaking broadly on a subject. So this effectively means that you can rely on them a little more solidly in terms of generating a transition sentence or phrase or a topic sentence. They usually generate a lot of questionable information when you ask them to provide examples, what I'm going to refer to here as supporting information. A lot of the time, it will just fabricate sources, fabricate quotes, or entire paraphrases. The difference here is that unlike past information that may have been made up, this is going to look really authentic. It may even sound exactly like an article that particular author could have written, but they didn't. It doesn't exist. And then somewhere in the middle ground, there's the question of can it unpack what the supporting information even means to the reader? What we might call the so what at the end of a paragraph. So what? What does all this mean? It's not going to have any sense of meaning. Therefore, it's going to be up to the person steering these machines to ultimately decide, what is ethical? Do these ideas make sense? Are there better insights that we could reach for instead? Here's an example of what these elements look like in a paragraph. So what I'm describing here is general to specific structure, where we're starting with a broad topic sentence, moving into more narrow supporting information that proves elements of that topic sentence, And then we're moving into some concluding information that unpacks the implications of that supporting information, and then potentially transition into the next topic in the next paragraph. So in this example, we have paragraphs or the building blocks of papers as the topic sentence, and then everything in red here below that is information that details that broad statement. So many students define paragraphs in terms of length. The paragraph is grouped at least five sentences. A paragraph is half a page long, etc. In reality, though, the unity and coherence of ideas among sentences is what constitutes a paragraph. A paragraph is defined as a group of sentences or a single sentence that forms a unit. And then we have a little citation in there. So that's important to note. A convention of supporting information in academic writing is going to be a citation, either uh, coinciding with a quote or a paraphrase. Length and appearance do not determine whether a section in a paper is a paragraph. For instance, in some styles of writing, particularly journalistic styles, a paragraph can be just one sentence long. So after all of that supporting information, I mean, what is the point of all that? What does that have to do with what this paper is about or what this paragraph is even about? Ultimately, a paragraph is a sentence or group of sentences that supports one main idea. That's highlighted in blue. That's what I would identify as concluding information in this paragraph. And then finally, in green, we have, now that this paper has defined what a paragraph is, it will next explain the generic components of a paragraph. So that's signposting to the reader, okay, this is what we did, this is what we're doing next. I would classify that as a transition. So this way of looking at writing can function as a building block for most academic writing, particularly research-driven writing that relies on a lot of supporting information. So let's begin by unpacking what a transition is. It's just a statement that connects the topic of the previous paragraph to the next, or maybe the topic of the current paragraph to the next paragraph. It can appear at the top or the bottom of a paragraph typically. It doesn't necessarily have to be an entire sentence. It could be a phrase or even a word like next, comma, and then you have essentially your topic sentence. Just the inclusion of next and comma signposts to the reader what is coming next. It's a continuation of what was set up in the argument. So there are probably a lot of really efficient ways to generate transition phrases or sentences in an LLM. Here is one suggestion. So you can see in here I have write a transition sentence connecting points 1 and 2, and then I define what 1 and 2 is. So 1 is just a short description of the topic, or even just the entire sentence. And then 2 is a short description of the next topic or sentence, right? And then the machine can theorize a connection for you, and then you might be able to take pieces of that or an entire statement from that and layer it into your paper. What you're going to start seeing in this approach later when Sam begins to demonstrate it for us is that this is sort of like layering in ingredients of a sandwich, or another metaphor I like to think about is layering in bricks in a wall when you're building something, right? So these are elements that kind of get generated, and then you as a rhetorician begin making more rhetorical, higher level decisions about what you're deciding to include, and you aren't necessarily fighting with the language itself so much. So the next thing we'll talk about is a topic sentence. So what is a topic sentence? It's usually presented at the top of the paragraph, possibly following a transition sentence, and it just defines what the rest of the paragraph will be about. It usually establishes a claim in service of the writer's overall argument for the entire document. So if we're considering this as a research paper, it could be a thesis statement or even a research question that it is somehow related to. So we have a few different ideas on how you can generate a topic sentence in an LLM and then trot it over into your document that you are constructing. The first is you type in suggest a list of topic sentences for a paragraph about blank. Or you can say write a topic sentence for the following paragraph. and then you insert the paragraph. This is really handy if you have the content, but you don't really understand how to like get it organized or succinctly define what is even going on in that paragraph. The LLM can help you figure that out. A lot of writing is figuring out uh, what ideas are important to lay out strategically and how those ideas can be most strategically connected for the reader, right? Uh, and this is one example of where an LLM can help you figure out those connections. Okay, so the final approach that we might suggest is generate a list of topics on blank for a blank assignment. So you have to give it a topic and then you have to give it a genre. So maybe it's a list of topics on uh, a list of topics on writing for a blog post or a discussion post for that matter, if we're talking about something that you could write for a class. And then it'll give you a list of stuff. You can tell it expand on topic number blank. Let's say there are 8 things. You can say, okay, expand on topic number 8. And you can even tell it right there, create an outline for topic number 8. And so it'll give you a pretty generic skeleton of a paper right in that outline. So it's modeling to you what conventionally these sorts of documents might look like. So it's giving you insight into genre knowledge around that particular document that you pointed it to. And then, as a final move, you can then ask it to write a topic sentence for each point in the outline. So what about supporting information? If you just put your entire assignment prompt into an LLM and ask it to generate the entire paper right there, it's going to make up a lot of stuff. And whatever it puts in there, you should be like really suspicious of. And you should most likely spend some time investigating where that information actually came from and if it's actually true. And that can be quite a lot of work. It seems to be more efficient to instead steer the machine into generating the supporting information in more limited ways, and then again be that selective rhetorician layering things into your actual document. So supporting information functionally in a paragraph is anytime you paraphrase or quote something, you provide general examples or explain something. Anytime you're presenting original research, let's say you have a table of data that you're explaining in this paragraph, or let's say you did a survey and you're presenting, a percent of this group said this instead of that. It can also be presenting your own personal narrative or experience as evidence. For example, telling a story is uh, really common in a genre known as the personal statement, which is something that you would write for grad school typically. That's typically like 4 separate paragraphs that touch on maybe 4 different stories from your life. And all of those are in service of different topic sentences attempting to prove different aspects of yourself. Typically something about how you're dedicated to whatever field you're wanting to enter into, and you're a talented student and stuff like that. Usually this information needs to be true to the best of the writer's knowledge. And usually it's got to be presented in service of the work's overall strategic argument. So again, that would be that thesis statement or research question or hypothesis. So always keep in mind that LLMs will absolutely fabricate sources. They don't have the awareness to stop and ask you for more information before they proceed to just do something. They're just going to do something, and it's going to look like what you asked for, or it's going to attempt to make it look like what you asked for. So how can we then use these LLMs to generate supporting information in a reliable way? This is what we hit on that seems to make the most sense, especially when we're thinking about the work that we commonly do in a writing center where we have a half hour to work with somebody. So we thought about this approach, and we thought about, okay, what could give us the maximum progress in a really efficient space of time? So one example of that is to upload a peer-reviewed article and ask it to summarize the main argument. Another example is to ask it to list the main concepts of the article. And this is also an excellent form of pre-reading. So if you have something complicated that you have to read for class, this is a great thing that you can try just to sort of prepare yourself for diving into whatever you've been assigned to read. And another thing you can do is you can ask it to suggest um, the most useful quotes for my paper on blank. And it will come up with some suggestions for you. Anytime it spits information out at you, especially when it comes to supporting information, you definitely need to still dive back into that document and check where that information is coming from. It doesn't understand the difference between the author of a peer-reviewed article and the author of uh, a different article that that author is citing within the article that you uploaded in. It gets confused at that quite easily. Another idea is that if you're writing a paragraph where you're touching on your own personal experience, an LLM can help steer your own mind and help you make sense of it. So, one demonstration that we tried was asking it to pretend to be an accomplished writing tutor at a university writing center. And then you say, I'm a student who is coming to you for help developing ideas in my blank assignment. Do you understand your role? And it'll say yes. And then you give it the assignment prompt. Here's the assignment prompt. You insert it. And then you say, please ask me questions one at a time to help me think about my personal experience with blank topic. And it will ask you a series of questions and you can write responses to it. And then what you can tell it to do is summarize all my responses to your questions. And then it has generated a summary of your own personal experience that should be relatively accurate. So the final component of a paragraph that we're going to be talking about is concluding information, the so what, the implications of all the supporting information that was delivered in the paragraph. So this connects details from the supporting information to the project's overall argument, topic, hypothesis. It may rephrase particular points or unpack what a particular quote means. Because a lot of the time we're quoting somebody and they say something in an amazing way, but we really need to maybe reformulate how that is phrased so that we really understand what it means in the context of this particular project. So we do have to be a little bit careful here because LLMs are not well suited to generate concluding information because they, again, don't really understand meaning. Because they don't understand meaning, they can't really be relied on to consider ethics. Ethics can't be exactly automated in any meaningful way. They don't really understand the meaning of abstract ideas. Um, so that means that they can't apply them to particular cases. So if you're being asked to think about a particular literary theory and then apply it to a particular artifact, such as an Instagram post, the machine won't necessarily come up with very specific details and know exactly what these things mean and then connect those things for the reader. And then finally, it won't necessarily innovate. Um, it will perform something that seems cautiously safe given a particular data set, something that seems pretty conventional. It might suggest, an argumentative point that appears like something that's already existing in its current data set. So how then can we steer LLMs to generate this kind of concluding information for a particular paragraph? Well, what we came up with was we feed it two topics and ask it what those two things have to do with each other. So, how does your thesis relate to your paragraph topic sentence? So, how does blank relate to blank? What does your paper topic have to do with your paragraph topic? Or vice versa, what is your paragraph topic? Why does paragraph topic matter in relation to paper topic? Or why would it be a good idea to include the following quote in a paragraph about blank? And then you just dump the quote in and see what it comes up with. Because again, the supporting information a lot of the time is something that's either quoted or paraphrased. So if you want to know why that matters in the paragraph, you can ask the machine that quite directly. So taking an overall view in all these pieces that you generate and what would this process look like as you worked with this technology in this way? you can think about it as, okay, I'm generating topic ideas with the help of this machine. Think of it as almost a co-pilot, right? Both of you are steering this plane. You can use it to suggest outline points, alter those points, feed them back into the system, and then generate topic sentences, transitions, and your concluding information, your takeaways. You can then investigate all of the sources that you're using for supporting information using Humata or Claude AI or Perplexity. And then ultimately, you can get a lot of good practice and deepen your understanding of the basic components of academic writing, and in particular, the academic paragraph. So really learning how to generate these things separately and layer them in. So you're going to determine what is the best thing to do to navigate all of these competing expectations that you might have, maybe your parents, maybe your instructor, maybe a possible employer, for a particular project that you're working on. What are the strongest, most strategic connections that I can present in the most efficient way possible for my readers? And how can I better investigate all of the information that I'm building in my supporting information to build the strongest case for my readers and ultimately arrive at new insights by considering why particular details and argumentative points matter. Okay, so with that, Sam is going to lead a demonstration and show us how this approach overall works in practice. Take it away, Sam.
So we're in Humata and we can click Ask. So we can begin by asking it to suggest paper topics on the Flint water crisis. And just a reminder, I'm going to be doing this a certain way, going through this demonstration in a certain format. There's a lot of different ways to approach paper writing and how to use AI in paper writing. But this is just the way that I'm going to be demonstrating today. So it generated quite a few different possible topics, looks like based on different places in the document. So we can just pick one. So let's choose the legal and ethical implications of the Flint water crisis, including the criminal charges against officials and corporations involved. So I can ask it, write an outline on so it's generating an entire outline for me. And if you were going in and actually writing this paper, rather than just doing a demonstration, you might move some of the things around in this outline. You would check it. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to assume that a lot of this is accurate and well structured. Next, I'm going to ask it to expand on its outline. You could also ask it to expand on individual points. That might get you better results because it'll focus on just one point. But as you can see, it's kind of generating larger bits of text about some of these main points in there. And Humata specifically does provide places where it was included in the document, where this might have been talked about. So it'll kind of jump around between different pages and highlight the information that's related to the point. So if we go in and we choose one of these, let's say topic 3, so the impact on public health, we can ask Humata to write a topic sentence for that point. So just a reminder, so it was the impact on public health, and it talks about the effects of lead contamination on children. And so actually, like, so the failure to release a report on unsafe lead levels in children's blood highlights the negligence and potential cover-up by the government officials in addressing the public health implications of the Flint water crisis. So I feel like that's a pretty good topic sentence. It's related to public health. It's also related to the overall topic of the paper, so the overall legal and ethical implications of the Flint water crisis. We can go even further and we can ask it to So I did a little bit of a typo earlier, but I asked it to describe how point 3, so the point that we were talking about and focusing on, relates to the paper's topic in one sentence to try to get at some of that concluding information. And it kind of repeated a lot of what it's already said. So this might need some tweaking to make it less redundant. But you could definitely include this at the end of the paragraph as kind of like concluding information. So we have some things written about topic 3. We have some concluding information. Humata specifically, as I said before, does pull directly from the article, but we can go even further and ask it to pull a specific quote. So it pulled some potential quotes from the paper, and we'll see if this is correct. So a quick search through the document, and we can see right here that this is an actual quote that I pulled from. This won't be accurate all of the time, and you have to be very specific with how you ask AI to generate quotes, because a lot of the times if you say just suggest quotes for point 3, it will just make stuff up. So you have to just be very specific and deliberate when you're asking it questions. To add on to this quote, in order to like incorporate this quote into the paragraph, we can ask it. So let's see, we'll highlight that first one and we'll go. So it generated some text based on that specific quote that you could either include to incorporate the quote in the middle of the paragraph. You could use it as concluding information. But so far, it's generated a lot of the writing that we could use to kind of put together a paragraph. So it's a lot less useful in generating entire paragraphs because paragraphs are very deliberate. We want them to say specific things and we want to connect them to different ideas. But if you work on it individually, each little part, you can start to get pieces together. And I could throw all of this in a Word document and I could start to structure my paper that way. You could decide to stop at the first any of these points. So you could just ask it for suggestions on paper topics. You could just stop at getting an outline. There's a lot of different ways to approach this and a lot of different ways to incorporate what it gives back to you into your writing process.
So if we take some of the things that I've copy and pasted, we can actually begin to structure a paragraph. So we have an intro, and a quote, and then also some follow-up information kind of describing that quote. A little bit more information talking about the specific mistakes that the government officials took. If I were to go through and edit this, I might add some more specific examples about the policies that government officials actually took to better describe this sentence. And then we also have a concluding sentence. So obviously you can see that there's a couple of things that might, repeat itself. It says highlight a couple of times. We say pretty much the same thing, like government were negligent, disregard for public health and safety, like failure to conduct, negligence is again noted here. And we do include a quote. It doesn't have proper citations, but considering we kind of were able to quickly find where this quote was, students could easily add a citation at the end of it. So this isn't a perfect paragraph, but it does represent the structure of one. And so in looking at this, we have some starting information that we can begin to change, edit, add some more supporting information, and students can really focus on how to make this a more effectively rhetorical paragraph.
Thank you for joining us today for our presentation on writing with LLMs. This presentation covered generating basic paragraph components for research writing. We plan to explore other tools, genres, and techniques in future presentations, but please feel free to contact either of us with questions or comments.